Hello, hello. Thought we'd do something a little bit different today. And this is one of the things that's on my docket of stuff to do. Is work on the command for and command attributes spec. It's getting a little unwieldy. So what I thought would be useful is to take some of the more generic pieces of this and split them out into individual PRs. There's a couple of things that I think we can easily lift out of this. So one of them is this work around buttons. So if we look at a button, syntax HTML. Yeah. Oh. What? That's confusing. Do the posts. Posts to the socials. Right, yeah, so what's the deal then? So in this spec, let's see if it has built recently. Form elements. Is this going to work? Yeah. One of the changes, this is all the command stuff. One of the changes we have is this prose, which says if the type is present and a submit button state, then it's specifically a submit button. We need to figure out stuff like constraint validation and things like that for buttons, because we're going to change how a submit button behaves with regards to being within a form. But this stuff can be split out because this isn't really like a substantive change to existing browsers. It's more editorial. So I think I want to pull that out. And then we can, some of this is just literally altering the wording of how the spec behaves. And then this is command stuff, command stuff, command stuff. The type getter steps, I think. We can pull this into a different PR as well. So let's start on that. So I've checked out main. So if we open, we go to the button element, we can see this is the original content, and it says type attribute is in the submit button. It's specifically a submit button. But one of the things that we added, I think, we say the content attribute is present and in the submit button state. I think this just says the type attribute is in the submit button state. But there's a difference between the content attribute and the submit and the attribute state, and so we want to kind of very carefully craft that. Because I think the invalid, this doesn't change, but yeah, so we'll do that. So type in submit button No, because interesting. Attribute is in the I don't know if there's a good way to do this. I just grep for like similar terms. Submit button state. No. Looks like this is the line. Let's embiggen this to about there. We'll shrink this one down and zoom in on this one to make it readable. So this says the type attribute is in the submit button state. If the type attribute is in the submit button state, the element is specifically a submit button. But what we want to do is we want to say the type attribute, if the type content attribute is present and in the submit button state, then the element is specifically a submit button. That's the first change. The second change is the getter steps. So we have somewhere, this is all command stuff. It's all command stuff. This is all command. Oh, there was... Where's the type? Ah, here we go, the type. So the value IDL attribute where is this change then? The value IDL attribute must reflect the content of the same name. So this type one, we cannot say content attribute of the same name limited to only known values. Instead, we want to have this getter algorithm. And so we're going to say the type getter steps are, and we're going to pretty much just crib this. Maybe we can go to the diff and just like, this is the bit we want. Oops, wrong button. Show comments. We just want this. So the type steps are, if it's a submit button, then return submit. If it's a type, if the type attribute is in the reset state, return reset, otherwise return button. Which is pretty much the same as what it used to be, except for it's very subtly different, which is that it used to be that the default state would return submit, but now we very subtly change it so that the default state will return button if this isn't a form participant, I believe. Because there's this line which says if this is a submit button, and so that concept has subtly changed. And we also need the type getter, type setter, which is somewhere here. Steps. Oh, we've already pasted that in. So this might be enough to raise a PR, because this is one of the very small changes that's part of this, and I want to make sure that we're just doing a series of small changes so that we can leave the bulk of this alone. But like, there's just some gnarly bits in here, but there's a little bit more that needs doing with this, I think, because so this constraint validation type is in the reset state or button state. The element is barred from constraint validation. So I think constraint I think we can just update this to say if the element is not a data X concept submit button. Right. So the change in wording here goes from like constraint validation. So if the type attribute is a reset state or the button state, the element's barred from constraint validation. But actually what we want, I think, is more like if the element's not a submit button, the element is barred from constraint validation. Because there's this subtle change of when it is a submit button, which is only when the content attribute is present. I think we probably still want this. I'm wondering if we can just elide these. Even though this looks a bit redundant, we'll see how that is accepted. So that's the constraint button. Constraint validation. And then we have the same thing here. So anywhere that there's this ATTR button type, we just need to review. So so that's fine. The type attribute controls the behavior of the button is activated. Is fine. This is all stuff we just looked at. If the element has a form owner, then switch on the element's type. Yep, that's fine. Actually, this is something I wanted to change as well in a separate PR. So, because we do something slightly different here. We say if the element is a submit button, otherwise if the element's type attribute is in the reset button state. And so we pull out some of these conditions. So this says if the element has a form owner, then switch on the element's type. And what we want to do instead is say if element is a span, we want the submit button. If element is a submit button, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to have a UL. I think this wants to be an OL. Excuse me. So the first step is going to be this: if element has a, we need the form owner stuff. So if element has a form owner, if element has a form owner, switch. So we want to say then submit. Basically here. If element has a form owner, then submit element's form owner. Oops. From element with user involvement set to user navigation involvement. Oh, I just noticed there's a double li there. That's not right. This needs to be a closing li. Return. So those are the steps for this needs an li as well. And so this needs to be indented one, and we probably want to break this out. So these are the steps for if it's a submit button. And then we have another set of steps for if it's a reset button. I should probably just, again, copy paste here. Yeah, we're here. So again, we want this. So if attribute is in the reset button state, and we need this OL. That did not copy and paste correctly. Wait, what? Oh, it's capturing some of this for some reason. Oh, that's annoying. If it has a form owner, then reset the form owner. Return. This is indented too far. No, it was the right way. So then there's that. This needs to be an li. I think we need a closing OL here. Because then there's just the invokey stuff. So if we go read, in fact, let me build, and we'll compare from the current standard, the diff, and the new version of this. Once this is finished downloading. Come on. But yeah. Oh, we got some errors. Definition for submit button state. This needs to switch to a definition. No. Wait, where are the definition? HTR button type submit state. I think this does need to switch to a definition. Button type submit state. It used to be part of the pros for the algorithm here, but it probably, I think I must have switched them to definitions in the table. Yeah. So yeah, these need to be definitions. In the HTML spec, there always needs to be a definition of a particular thing. It can only occur once. So let's see if that builds. Yeah. I think this looks good. I'm actually curious where the popover stuff is. Activation. Because I can't see. Did I? I need to check out upstream main, and that's probably going to break this. Yeah. Given events target. I thought that was missing. I need to update my resync my fork. Sync fork. Update branch. So if the form's disabled, we return. Or if the element's disabled, we return. If the element's node document's not fully active, we return. If the element is a submit button, and the element has a form owner, then we're going to submit it. But if the element is a submit button, we're going to return either way. If the element is in the reset button state, if the element has a form owner, we're going to reset it, and either way we're going to return. And then that gives us the space to do the button related activities if it's type button. So now if we open the multi-page, activation. Oh, this is we want the button element. Activation. So we can just read this again to double check. So the button element's activation behavior given event is disabled return, node return. The element is a submit button and it has a form owner. We submit the form owner with elements user involvement, yep. And otherwise we return, or either way we return. Reset, either way we return, we run the popover steps. Okay, cool. I think that looks good. So going back to ATR button type submit. So this says if the form action blah 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 must not be specified if the type attribute is not in the submit button state. I think this should say must not be specified if the element is not a, is this going to be, yeah, is not a concept submit button. We can just shorten that a little bit. HTML button type. So there's the keywords. Submit button. Reset. What's this one? If type attribute is in the reset state, then return reset. Oh, for the getter steps. And then we're back to the table. So I think we're in a good place here. Whoops. Source. What? Let's get commit up here. So what are we doing? We're like editorial rework submit rework button states to allow for command for attributes. I'll just do, yeah, this. Oops. So this is the first piece of this puzzle, I think. And so, yeah, we've taken a chunk out of the command for spec, and we've kind of made it into its own little PR that will hopefully be much easier to review, which is just the changes to how the spec talks about button elements. It hasn't actually changed anything, like, it hasn't changed any of the behavior. There's no breaking changes here. There's no behavioral changes here. This is purely editorial. I think this is in a good place. So we'll raise this PR, and we need to fill in all the preamble. So I think all of this stuff is NA because like, I wouldn't recommend, if you're making a PR to the HTML spec, I wouldn't recommend deleting all of this normally. However, because this change is purely editorial, I think we can get away with it. So, editorial. So this PR changes the way button elements represent their state. Specifically, how they are defined as submit buttons. I'll just wrap this in maybe italics. Some of the generic algorithms, such as the manual steps. I realise this could probably be zoomed in a bit to make it more readable for folks. The intent of this change is to carve out the space for new command and command 4 attributes. Most of these changes are already in oops. Let's just do it. So here's the first one. This design kind of falls apart as soon as you zoom in 200%, doesn't it? If only someone worked on this that we knew that we could reach out to. I think this isn't a good place. I want to do another PR. And I can't remember why. So I need to go look at the... There was other stuff. What was the other stuff? The dialogue stuff. Yes, the dialogue stuff. So let's do a also let's do fetch. Whoops. Right. So the other thing that this does is if we go to interactive elements, we look at the dialogue element. This one's going to be much smaller, I think, but the changes. So this is in the diff view of this command and command 4. We break out show modal into a separate algorithm. So in the current HTML spec, show modal, it says the show modal method steps are if this blah 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 blah. In the changes that we've made, because we call show modal, the easiest way to do this in the spec is to break out show modal into a different algorithm, and then the IDL show modal is just to run that algorithm, and then we can run this in other places. So if we look for show modal dialog, we can see it's here and it's here, and so we just need to break it out into those two places. Now obviously this is happening in this PR, which is fine, but I think what we can do is just a very small change to just break this out into this. The same is true for close, I thought. I think maybe not, because close is so simple. It just does this. But I think this is because, well, let's go check what we've actually written. So if in the show modal state or the close state, close the dialog invoker with the value. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So that's not necessary. It is literally just show modal. So let's do this one PR then, show modal. So this is going to be really quite trivial, this PR, but it will be important. So we're saying again, we could probably pull in this one change. And I'm actually tempted to source. Source. Yeah. Reset. Let's do a checkout P. This is just going to be using Git as an editor. So we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. The problem is there's quite a few changes since this, so actually this is a bad idea. Check out origin main. So we'll go back to just editing this manually. Show modal. Yeah. Was tempted, but it's just going to be easier to do it this way. Show modal. So this changes to this. So we say the HTML dialog element, excuse me, the HTML dialog element show modal method steps are to show a modal dialog given this. And then we say to show a modal dialog given dialog and the element and subject. And then anywhere we have span, whoops, anywhere we have span this, we need to change that to var subject. Yeah. All these. That should be it. Subject. I'm just seeing if there's any other bigger changes, but I think that's it. Yeah. So one other thing that we probably need to do is just double check that these lines are still at 100. Because if they've gone over 100 characters wide, we need to reformat them. Where is... Right, so 100 is fine. It's fine. That's also fine. That's fine. I think we're fine, which is curious. This one doesn't look fine at all. So this one isn't. Whoops. Yeah, this needs to be like here. So that needs to be formatted like that. But otherwise, this all wraps at 100. Okay, so we've got another PR here now. So separate out show modal steps into own algorithm. So we're going to create a pull request on this, and this one just says this is again editorial. This editorial PR separates out the show modal steps into their own algorithm to enable us to call the show modal steps from other algorithms. This is a supporting PR for which requires this change as it calls show modal from the button activation steps. Create. Okay, cool. So let's just go over what we've done in the last hour or so. These are the two PRs we've got. So the whole point of this is that this spec is getting a little bit unwieldy, and there's some other changes that needed to be made, but this also needs a rebase, and as you can see, it's like 340 comments deep, so this is a bit heavyweight. What I wanted to do is kind of separate this out into more digestible chunks that we can kind of iterate on, hopefully, to get them into the right place. The two things that I saw that we could really easily pull out is, one is the dialogue, and so dialogue show modal was just like the dialogue show modal steps are this, but we can separate that into a different algorithm, and that reduces a lot of noise in this diff. You know, it reduces 34 lines of change, so roughly 10% of this diff, right? Or a little under, like 7% of this diff. That's good. The other one is reworking the button, and again this is editorial. Again, this reduces roughly 10% of the diff noise here. What this does is it redefines how buttons represent their state in a way that just very subtly changes and enables us to come in with the command and command 4 stuff to change how submit buttons behave when they're presented with command and command 4 attributes. I think this is in a good place as well. I think both of these look great. That's the hour. We'll see what the editors think, but I'm pretty hopeful that we're in a good place, and hopefully this will be warranted. Like, hopefully people will appreciate splitting this PR out, but yeah, we'll see on that. I thought I'd do something really different today rather than hacking on C++. I thought we could hack on HTML for a bit. Hopefully it was informative. If you've been watching, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.